to episode 41 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria, your host, and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this episode can be found on the blog, which is stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com, and we also have a Ravelry group where you can join in the chatter. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about this week in Stockholm, some works in progress, a few finished objects, and I'll do a little question and answer discussion type thing. So let's get started. This week in Stockholm, we had some nice little bit of snow last night, and we have rearranged the apartment. I don't know if you can tell from this view, but you have slightly different view than you have had in the past, and I'm just going to try this out this week and see how it goes, but I might change it again. It just depends. So before we used to have, I was tilted a little more this way from in your view, and we still have the shelves that were above the desk before. Give you a little. So that was more your view before, where we had those shelves over there. And now the couch is below those shelves instead of the desk. And the couch used to be right here to my right, switched over there, and now the desk is right in front of me here, and it's nicely situated in front of the window so that first of all, I get a lot of nice, as much of the natural light as possible when I'm sitting working at my desk, and also, conveniently, the heater is now right at my feet. So, really nice, and so far, so good. So far, so good, yeah. We also moved this bookshelf, which used to be on the wall next to me when I was podcasting, and anyway, so that was this week in Stockholm. We also went to the Fotografiska Museum, which is the photography museum in Stockholm, and we saw an exhibit of portraits, which was really amazing. These portraits are, probably 7 or 8 feet tall by 4 feet wide, and it's just full face. And there were some other exhibits there as well, which were nice, but it was just fun to go out and do something different. And there's a cafe on the top of the museum, still inside, which has a very nice view over the water and the city. So that was a fun little outing for Sunday afternoon. Otherwise, I have been busy with school and doing a bit of knitting, and I think that I have quite a bit to show you actually, but to me, the past 2 weeks, I have felt that I haven't been doing very much knitting, even though now it seems like I have some things to show you. I think part of the reason is because most of the things that I'm knitting now are not for me, and also I have sort of come to a standstill on my colorwork sweater, and I'm not sure what I'm going to do. But anyway, that is pretty much it for this week in Stockholm. I guess I would just mention that it seems that this podcast has rather unintentionally become a every other week podcast, bi-monthly podcast. And basically I'm just trying to record when I can, and so that's how it is. In 2 weeks, actually, today I booked us flights to go to Copenhagen for the weekend, so I have a couple of days in between when my next class starts, after this one finishes, and we will go over there. We found some really great flights, so should be a nice little adventure. So I may try to put out a podcast next week or maybe in 3 weeks. We'll just have to see. So for works in progress this week, I have been working on 2 new projects. And actually, I think all 3 are new projects that you haven't seen. The first one is the Crenate socks, which is a pattern by Rachel Coopy. And I have finished the first sock. I'll put it on my lovely sock blocker. You can see here that I have finished the first sock, and this was so much fun to knit. I can totally see myself making this pattern multiple times, and it's really enjoyable. So basically it's a top-down sock, and you start here with twisted rib, and I did a couple fewer rows of the twisted rib in the first part here because I knew I was going to be very short on yarn. Do the twisted rib, and then you have this nice leaf motif that goes on to the front, and the back continues with the twisted rib, and the leaf pattern shows up here at the very end. You can see that I did a contrasting heel and toe. I would have preferred to be able to do it all in the single color, but it didn't work out for how much yarn that I had left. I had 44.6 grams of this pink, light pink color, and I still have, this is the second half, which is, 22.3 grams, and I'm hoping that it works out. We will see. This is the Old Romance color from the Wool Barn, and it's on her smooth sock base, which is one of my absolute favorite sock yarns that I've ever knit with. I have been wearing my Saniva socks, which I knit out of this, which are sort of a mock cable pattern. I've been wearing those a lot, and they are holding up really nicely and are just lovely to wear. So I will be trying to get my hands on some more of this yarn soon. What else can I say about this pattern? Pretty quick knit. I knit it on my double pointed needles, the US size 0 2mm bamboo clover needles, and that was also a lot of fun. So these will be a gift, and I just need to finish or start the second one. And yep, weaving the ends. The contrasting color is this, comes from this ball of yarn, which I was given, I swapped with, and it is Zazu Yarns. This is the Rusty Chocolate color, and I think that it goes really nicely with the darker specks in the Old Romance from the Wool Barn. So those seemed like a good match. Another project that I started since the last time we talked is a pair of socks, another pair of socks. And this is the project that I've been working on in class. Sometimes I knit in class and sometimes I don't. It just sort of depends what the subject is and if it makes sense for me to, if I can sit and listen well while knitting and I don't need to take many notes, then sometimes I bring knitting with me to class. This is a sock that I am knitting also for someone else, and it does not have a particular pattern, but I can share the features of the sock with you. It's for a guy, so you can see it's a bit too big for this blocker, but still easier to show you. So this sock is knit in Regia 4-ply yarn, and this is the Jeans Blue colorway, I believe, which is color number 02137. And here these come in 50-gram balls. I'm not sure. Sometimes I know that they come in 100 grams, but anyway. So I have finished the first sock, obviously, you can see that, and I cast on 72 stitches on US size 0 2 mm, my new Zing needles, which I will talk about in a little bit. I cast on 72 with a tubular cast on, so I used a provisional cast on first, and then, yeah, picked up, or like knit on with the blue yarn to do the live stitches, I guess, for the tubular cast on. And then I did 1x1 rib for a little while, and right at the end of the 1x1 rib I decreased 4 stitches down to 68 stitches so that the leg was a little bit more fitted. And I did the Eye of Partridge heel for the first time, which turned out really cool, I think. The Eye of Partridge heel flap. It's really easy. I didn't know that it was this simple, but basically if you've ever done a slip stitch heel, it's exactly the same, except that instead of doing, so on the right side you do slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1 all the way across, and on the wrong side you purl. And then on the next row, instead of doing slip 1, knit 1, you do knit 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, slip 1, knit 1, so that they're offset by 1. And then you get this cool sort of textured pattern that's slightly different than just the standard slip stitch heel. And I think it turned out really nice. I did a Dutch heel turn, which is sort of a, I think it's also called the square heel. And I had this heel on the, I think this is the same heel that's on the Ceneva socks, I'm not positive, similar, anyway. And I really love how that heel fits, and I had never done it before the Ceneva socks, but now I think I'll probably do it on most heels that I do. And then with that, you decrease less frequently for the gusset, so it's like every 4th row instead of every other row, and then I just did a normal toe. I also decreased down a little bit more, I think, in the foot, so that it's slightly tighter down in the foot, maybe 64 stitches. I hope I made a note about that, but I probably didn't, as usual. I think that the recipient will really enjoy these socks, and I hope that I can get the other one knit up pretty quickly. I have cast on the second one. I cast on yesterday evening, Sunday evening, so that I could have it for class today, Monday. And I was in class this morning. And I'm knitting this the same way. It's on the Zing double point needles. And I am so far really enjoying these needles. In the past I've mostly preferred Magic Loop, but lately I have been getting more into using double pointed needles, which is how I originally learned to knit socks. The thing about these needles, which is slightly different I guess, and may be annoying to some people and was a little bit hard to get used to, is that the tips are blunt. And it's not the same as other blunt needles that I have knit with before. The Addy needles, for example, I think they're called like Addy Turbo or something. Those were some of the first needles I ever had, and I find that those had quite a blunt tip, especially compared with, for example, the Hiya Sharps. These have a fairly pointed tip, but the very end of the needle is flat. So, I know it's really hard to see, but it's instead of being rounded or very pointed at the tip, it's just sort of flat across. So it's a little bit strange and a little bit something to get used to, but after knitting a couple rows to get used to this, where I was having to look and make sure that I wasn't splitting stitches with this needle, I was able to knit once again without looking. And I know someone on my Instagram picture of needles, I think, asked if I could give a little demonstration for knitting with double pointed needles, because she said that she always feels like Edward Scissorhands when she knits with double points. I can totally agree with you on that it is kind of strange when you first start out to have all these needles going every which direction. For me, I think that I could recommend, if you are more comfortable with magic loop, and let's say you're knitting a sock, that you should first cast on with the magic loop and knit maybe the cuff or something, and then switch over to the double points and see if it's less cumbersome for you. For me, when I first start out with magic loop, the first 10 rows or 5 rows is just really crazy. When I first start out with double pointed needles, the first 5 or 10 rows is just needles everywhere, and yeah. But then after you have a little bit more sock on the needle, it becomes a lot easier to manage the needles, and you just sort of knit across. You can see like maybe you can't see, but this needle just sort of hangs out in between my fingers. And when I get to the end of a row, I always tuck the needle I was just working on underneath the needle that I'm about to work on, and the needle that I'm about to work on is above all the other needles. So, and then I start again. I think it just, sort of a personal preference for how you do it, but I don't know. Here's your little example. I don't really have an easy way to film over my shoulder, otherwise I would give you my view of this, but yeah. Anyway, so I think that I will probably work a bit more on this week and hopefully have that finished pretty soon. I just went to the kitchen and put a loaf of bread in the oven, and if it's finished while I'm still recording, I will bring it out here to show you. Just have my timer going here. Speaking of bread, I have cast on my bread basket cloth, and I have been knitting a little bit on that, although I haven't knit on it in a couple days. And this is in a lovely project bag from Deb of Fondant Fibers, and this was a set of 2. This is one smaller bag and then a larger sweater size bag. I really like these because they have a nice white interior and they're flexible, so they're easy to stick in my purse. The bottom is squared so they stand up on their own, and they have a nice little zipper pull tab. So yeah, nice little project bag. And my bread cloth is coming along nicely. I am modifying the pattern that I saw on Ravelry, but it still has a very similar design to it. I started with the pinhole cast on, which can be found on the Tin Can Knits blog. They have a nice tutorial there. It's the same cast on that's used in the Vivid blanket and in the Pop blanket by Tin Can Knits. It's just a nice way to start in the middle and not have a hole gaping there, because you cast on the stitches and then are able to cinch the hole closed with the end. The pattern on Ravelry that I saw had yarn over increases along these 4 lines, and I'm doing make one right and left increases. Then I'm doing the similar knit and purl texture pattern, and it will be a square. It was more obviously a square before when I had it on Magic Loop, but I've just been able to switch to 24-inch needles because it finally got big enough, so now I'll be able to knit in the round, which I think will help it go a bit faster. I haven't knit on this very much. I knit on it kind of a lot, maybe at the beginning of after my last podcast, but I haven't done much more on it since then because I've been working on the socks. But yeah, it's coming along. I think it will be really nice once it's blocked and the linen gets a chance to really become the final fabric, which will be a nice drapey cloth. So this yarn is a Swedish linen, and you can find all the information about it on my project page. I can't remember the name right now. I think it starts with a K, but I bought it here at my local yarn store. I know they have a website, but I'm not sure where they ship to. So I think that is it for what I have been working on. I have sort of one other work in progress, which I'm sort of counting half as a work in progress and half as a finished object. And that is because I am just knitting the I-cord, which will go to my finished object that you'll see. But this I-cord has only seen a couple of stitches and needs to grow quite a bit before it will be done. So that might give you an idea of my first finished project, which I finished last night and is still wet. So it's sitting down here on the floor next to the heater, but I will pick it up and show it to you. It's not super wet, but it's a little bit damp still. So these are the Starry pants pattern, which is by Tina Haglund. And I showed these to you last week. And since then, I have finished them. I think they turned out really cute. And yeah, like I said, they're damp. But the pattern worked out in the end. I'm pretty happy with how the pieces came together. There's not a seam, but you can see where the pattern sort of, yeah, there's a little bit of a like jog here sort of, because yeah, you're knitting in the round, but you have to restart the color chart over again. Some things that I really like about this pattern is that it's a really cute idea to make leggings, and I think that in the end they turned out really good. I was contacted by the designer after the last podcast, and she gave me a couple of suggestions for how I could perhaps understand the pattern a little bit better. And she acknowledged that it was rather difficult to, how, I just got majorly blown out. It was rather difficult how the pattern was written, given that you have to sort of superimpose this colorwork pattern on a bunch of different sizes of pants, and I can appreciate that that is a tricky task. She said that she is looking into adjusting the instructions so that they're more clear, because she has received some feedback that it's not 100% clear. I'm still a little bit sick. In the end, I think those pants turned out really cute, and if you are an experienced knitter, especially with color work, then I think you should be able to figure out the pattern as written right now. So this little I-cord, which will eventually be a long I-cord, will be used for the waistband drawstring for those pants. And I might have them with me the next time that I record, and if that's the case, I might show them to you again just because, or maybe I'll just take a picture, I'm not sure. But they're a little bit strange to hold up right now because they're so floppy and damp. Anyway, you can find that pattern also on Ravelry, and it's Starry Pants in English, and the pattern is in English and Norwegian. The other finished project that I have this week is one that has been kind of ongoing for a while, and that is these lovely striped socks. I started these quite a while ago, and I was inspired by Snippets and, oh, why can't I just, totally just forgot her name. Snippets and Spokes. I was inspired by Snippets and Stacy, to try out some non-self-striping socks. And by that I mean the yarn itself wasn't a single ball of stripes. It was one ball of white and one ball of black. And I think they turned out really well. These are just some fun socks. I did knit these top down, and I did a slip stitch heel, and then I decreased normally for the gusset, and yeah, just did a normal toe, which for me is just decreasing on either side. Like, it's hard to show it in the black, of course, but just decreasing along here. First every other row until I have half the stitches, and then every row until I have just a couple stitches left that I Kitchener at the end. But I'm really happy to have those finished, and it was just a nice project to get off the needles, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. So I can definitely see some future striped sock knitting happening. What's nice when you knit socks out of two different colors of yarn and make your own stripes is that you can get them exactly matching, because you don't have any question with the gauge or anything. It's just, I know that these are 3 stripes of white and 3 stripes of black. And that's how it works. So yes, those socks are also finished. Let's see, so question and answers. The only thing that I was really going to talk about was sort of the how to use double pointed needles, and like I said, I suggest that if you are more used to magic looping, that you first cast on with magic loop and maybe knit a couple of rows, and then switch to the double points, so that you can get a feeling for it. And don't give up directly, because it definitely does take a bit of getting used to, but after you knit a couple of rows, I think that you will find that, yeah, you can make it work and it's not so cumbersome. But like I said, I first started out knitting socks on double pointed needles, and then once I discovered magic loop, I thought I would never knit on double points again. And only recently have I gone back to knitting some socks on double points and enjoying it, just kind of to mix things up every once in a while. Yes, so upcoming. I'm not sure what I'm going to do about my colorwork sweater. I haven't knit anything on it since the last time that I podcasted, and that sort of makes me think that I either need to just set it aside for a while and work on it at a different time, or I might need to rip it out. I haven't decided yet. I love the yarn. Oh, sorry, I'm like a little bit sick still. I love the yarn, and I want it to be a sweater. I have thought about ripping it out and doing another sweater with maybe just a colorwork yoke or something, but I just haven't decided yet. So for now, it's still waiting on the side, and I will perhaps revisit it soon, hopefully. I would like to cast on something else this week. Because I'm knitting the socks in class, I mostly save these stockinette socks just for when I'm in class, because I can't do anything else then, and it's nice to have a project. I feel like I want to have something else on the needles that's a little bit more complicated that I can work on when I'm home, or just realized I have flour on my hand. Maybe you didn't see that. I can work on it when I'm home, in the evenings, on the weekends. I know that I'm going to be babysitting this weekend, and one of the nights the kids will be asleep almost the entire time. so I would like to have a project to work on then. I think that I would really like to cast on a sweater, but I have this sort of dilemma with having this half-finished sweater on the needles. I get uncomfortable with having more than one sweater on the needles at a time. So I don't know if that will happen. If I do cast on a sweater this week, then I think it will probably be the herbarium sweater. And I'll show you a picture of it on my phone. There it is. And I think this pattern is really beautiful. It has actually a similar shape as the sweater I'm wearing, which is the Stripes and Square or Square and Stripes pattern by Vera Valimaki. The front is all over lace. It has sort of drop shoulders, and then it has stockinette sleeves, and the back is also stockinette. I think that would be a nice sweater for spring, and I would like to cast that on. But I also really like the Wellwood pattern that I got from my parents and my sister for Christmas, and I have the yarn to knit that one, so I might cast that on. But I don't know. So we will have to see. But I think that I might want to just have another project on the needles. Maybe a shawl, who knows. I need to maybe have a look through some of my yarn and see if I can match any of the patterns in my favorites and queue to some of the yarn that I have. Otherwise, I can smell some delicious bread just about finished baking, so I'm going to be right back with a fresh loaf. Alright, so I'm back and I have a lovely fresh loaf of bread right next to me that smells delicious and is singing its little crackling song after coming out of the oven. It's still really hot, so I can't really tip it towards you. But I decided to make this one with sesame seeds on top, which is the first time I've tried that. It's technically not really like the flour. The type of bread that I made is a combination whole wheat flour, white flour, and rye flour, so it's the European peasant loaf recipe from the new artisan bread in 5 minutes a day. So technically this bread recipe isn't supposed to have seeds on it, but I wanted to have seeds on it, so I thought I would give it a try. Looks like it turned out pretty good. You can see that I have a lame half cutting board here because it broke. But I think this will be pretty good. So I also tried a little bit of a different shape. Usually I make them into nice little rounds, but I thought that I would try to make more of a sandwich bread or something. So it'll take a little bit of technique mastery, I guess, but I think this is a good first attempt. So in case you are following along with the bread, becoming a bread master in 2016, we have a thread over on the board, and you are welcome to come there and share pictures if you are also trying to bake bread for the first time, or if you are already a master bread baker. I would love to see your bread and share any tips that you have. I am mostly using recipes, well, I'm only using recipes pretty much from the New Artisan Bread book, which I mentioned, I think, last week or the week before as well. And so far I've had a lot of success with those. I am quite amazed how some little changes can totally make a difference with how the bread turns out. Last weekend, for example, on Friday, we went to Thomas's parents' house for dinner, and I made 2 loaves of bread to bring. And just how differences in the scoring for one loaf compared to the other loaf totally changed how the loaf came out in the end. One of them I scored it I think a little bit too deep, and then it kind of spread out too much. It still tasted delicious, and yeah, it looked okay, but compared to the other one, which I didn't score as deeply and I scored in a different pattern, it just wasn't as good. Good looking. But yeah, I think, sorry, I know I'm just like staring at this bread. I'll give you another little look at it here. I let this one rise just on a cookie sheet that was sitting on the oven while the oven was preheating. And otherwise I've been letting them rise in my proofing basket, which seems to be working pretty well. But this one I wanted to give a little bit more of an oblong shape, so a round basket wouldn't work. Anyway, I think that is pretty much it for this week. If you have any suggestions for yarn stores or things to do in Copenhagen, I would love to hear them. Originally I had been thinking maybe there was a chance I could get to Unravel, which is the yarn festival that will be happening in 2 weeks, but with the flights and everything, it didn't seem to work out. So I'm still excited to go to Copenhagen and check out a new city. Love to hear your tips if you have some, and otherwise I will see you next time. Happy knitting! Bye!